Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about my 2023 goals, and I'm so excited to sit down and finally film this video because this is one of my favorite videos to make every year. Is what are my goals going to be in the new year? I have been sharing my goals here on YouTube for I don't know how many years now, but it is one of my favorite things to bring you along for my goal journey and share with you the process from start to finish, from setting my goals at the beginning of the year to where we end up at the end of the year. That was yesterday's video. I shared all about my 2022 recap, and now we are jumping into 2023. This year, I am not using a specific set goal planner. Technically, I am using some of my own creation. So to come up, let me rewind a smidge. To come up with my goals, I actually used some reflection questions from a lot of different planners. I reviewed so many goal planners on my channel over the course of October and November, and so I had a ton in my possession, including a ton of different questions, and I answered likely way more than was actually necessary in terms of reflection. I just really wanted to get a feel for like what reflection questions were really impacting the goals that I was picking. And there is no right or wrong amount or type of reflection for any given person to help you figure out your goals for the next year. But I can't say I did this exact process, I use this exact planner, because I use a lot of different planners and reflection, and I know that's not possible for everybody. That was just the nature of my business and my channel, and the fact that I had all these goal planners in my possession with lots of different questions. So I did all of that, and I ultimately came up with 5 goals that I am focusing on in 2023, which is, I think, the lowest number of goals I've ever set in a year. But the first thing that I want to comment on related to that small number is that it is just my personal goals. Now, I am planning to share my business goals with you in the quarterly video. So this is just going to be the annual. Later this week, we'll have a quarterly goals video for Q1. And then even later this week, we'll have a January actions video. For now, we're just talking about annual, and we are just talking about personal. For years and years, my business and my personal goals were one and the same. It was a side hustle. I had a full-time corporate job, and my business and my goals were all coming from the same time pockets, right? So it made sense for my personal goals and my business goals to overlap. Last year was my first year working full-time for myself, and I struggled all year last year trying to figure out what to do with my business goals, where to have them live, keep them with my personal goals, separate them, et cetera, et cetera. And it took me literally all year, it feels like, to finally come up with a system that works really well for me. And first off, that means keeping them completely separate. My business goals are one page and my personal goals are another page. And yes, do I consider my life as a whole when I pick both of them? 100%. But I don't need them in the same system or the same planner. Number 2 is my business goals are only going to be set quarterly. When I try to estimate what business is going to look like for the entire year, I get very overwhelmed. I know things are going to change, and it just sets me up for more like readjusting in the future. I am way better off just focusing on one quarter at a time for my business. So with that, I don't have annual goals for the business. Now, have I thought about what I might work on in Q2, 3, and 4? Absolutely. And that will make a little bit more sense when I share my Q1 business goals. Some of it is like foundational work of something I'm probably going to do later in the year. But I'm still not making concrete plans, concrete annual goals for my business. So this video is just going to be the 5 personal goals that I have chosen for 2023. One more thing I want to say before we actually jump into what they are. I know, I'm sorry, like this is the longest intro ever. I am a big proponent of more vague goals. I truly believe, and I have a mug that says it, that all goals are achievable on the right timeline. The issue is that we don't actually know what that timeline is. There are so many factors that impact how long it's going to take us to achieve our goals. And when we set specific goals with specific timelines, I think we are usually setting ourselves up for failure because we don't know if that's even going to be possible. It could take us way less time, it could take us way more time, and it's just really hard to predict. So I think that it is beneficial to either pick vague goals with a timeline, like a year, or more specific goals, but it could take you as long as it's going to take you to achieve that goal. Annual goals give us a natural timeline. So most of my goals are pretty vague. There is one exception, and I'll talk about that when we get there, but most of my goals are very vague, and I will just get more specific the more that we zoom in, right? On a quarterly basis, I'm a little bit more comfortable setting a timeline because I do know a little bit more about what my life looks like for that quarter. I still am not super concrete, but I do get more specific as we zoom in on the times. But for the year, I'm pretty vague. One last thing before we jump in. I'm so sorry. I meant to talk about this earlier. So like I said, my reflection and prep, I used a lot of different goal planners. In progressing going forward, I'm using some things that I'm creating myself. I am hoping to eventually be able to release them to you. If you're a member of the Patreon community, you're gonna get them a little bit sooner, but I am using things that I'm creating myself as a structure and to test it out and to see if the structure works for me. I am creating what I need. Basically, I'm creating what I have wanted in a goal planner because no goal planner has ever been perfect for me. I've made do and I've used products that have worked, but never been, no, there's no such thing as perfect, but never been exactly what I thought I wanted. So that's what I'm doing this year. I'm creating exactly what I wanted. And so you're gonna see a sneak peek of it in this video. The one I write on today is pretty boring and simple, but going forward, I will continue to show you pieces of the kind of the system that I am creating for myself. So within that system, I am still going to be color coding my goals. And the colors that I picked were really based on whether I had a mild liner highlighter and a Zig dot marker, which are the two markers that you'll see me use throughout my goal setting process, where I could match them to each other. That's how I picked those colors. There's no special, like these colors don't have any kind of special meaning, except I figured out which ones I could match the best. They also happen to be on the brighter side, which is what I love. I really do need someone to create markers that have like a highlighter on one side and the dot on the other, hopefully in bright colors, but so that they match perfectly. Until that exists, I'm doing my best and I'm making do with what I can. So I did pick out my 5 colors based on what I had available. Okay, now let's actually get into my goals. Goal number 1 is to move and get settled in Chicago. If you are new here, welcome. I'm Laken. I currently live in New York City with my husband and my cat. And in just a couple of months, we are moving to Chicago to be closer to family. And so our moving date is, you'll see that when we get to the January action items, is still a little bit up in the air. Our lease in New York City is up March 1st. As of the filming of this video, we do not have an apartment in Chicago yet, but we are moving by March 1st. So spoiler alert, the Q1 focus of this goal is going to be on the moving part, but the overarching theme of the year is that we move and then we get settled. And I have brainstormed a lot of different things of what that means, right? Getting settled means the relationships and the rhythms that we have with my family who live there. When we see them now, when we visit Chicago now, it's a different vibe. Now we did live there for a few months during 2020, but that was still a very different vibe because we're not going to be living with them. And so the rhythms and routines with my family who lives there, all of our friends, we do have friends that live in Chicago. We do have a pretty good foundation of people that we already have. And so I want to very quickly make plans with those people and work on, continuing to build those friendships of the people that we do know in Chicago. And then also maybe making some new friends, and then things like finding new doctors there, right? Some of them I think will be easy. We'll ask friends and family for recommendations, like doctors that aren't as important, an eye doctor, a dentist, etc. I know my mom, my sister already have hair and nail salons ready to go for me, but for some other more of specialty doctors, right? We want to be able to find that and establish that and start making some appointments. And then obviously getting settled in our actual physical space is part of that goal as well. All right, goal number 2, this is the one that is more of a concrete kind of check mark at the end of it. I mean, I can check mark moving and getting settled, moving for sure. Getting settled is still kind of an arbitrary, do I feel settled? Do we feel settled in Chicago? This next goal is a concrete, I'm gonna finish it by the end of the year or I'm not. And I am comfortable putting that because in my brain, this can't possibly take a whole year. I mean, it very well could. And I'm actually not starting it till Q2, so I might not finish it. But the goal is to change my last name. We got married earlier this year, and at first I postponed changing my last name because of our honeymoon tickets were booked in my maiden name, and I didn't want to deal with my passport not getting here in time or being in the wrong last name, etc. So I was like, I'll wait till we get home from the honeymoon. And then we got home from the honeymoon, and I looked at a calendar and was like, so I'm going to change my last name. I'm gonna go deal with the New York City DMV to then move in 6 months. No, I'm not. That does not sound like a good idea. So I am waiting until we move to officially start that name change process. I am hoping that I finish that by the end of the year. And I know there's a lot of components, and the first step of this goal is literally gonna be to research how to do this. I know some of you have shared some suggestions before. I'm prepared and ready to do all that research and hoping that it takes less than a year. And I know there will probably be straggler things that I forget about that might carry over into future years, but at least the foundation of it, right, the big important pieces, done by the end of the year. And then a little tiny baby subset of this goal that was actually part of one of last year's goals, if you watched my 2022 recap, is to get a will all situated for us. I didn't want to make that its own goal, but like once we get my last name changed, then like getting our wills all set up. All right, the next category or annual goal that I have is to strengthen important relationships. This past year more than ever, as we were preparing to leave New York, I realized how important the relationships I have in my life are. And I know that some of those are going to be a lot more difficult to maintain once we no longer live in the same place. But technology is amazing. We love to travel. We have friends that love to travel. Like, I am determined, getting a little emotional, to make sure that we continue to strengthen, not even just like maintain, those relationships with the people that we want to once we have moved out of New York. And now this also encompasses other relationships as well. Our relationship, our marriage, our relationship with our families, kind of also figuring out some of those things now that we're married, and holidays and all that jazz. Again, there's a little bit of overlap there with my family in Chicago, and whether that's a get settled thing or a relationship thing. And then relationships with our friends in Chicago, again, a little bit of overlap there as well. And similarly to the get settled, right, I brainstormed a lot of things and ideas related to this goal because it isn't a concrete start to finish kind of goal. All right, goal number 4 is to prioritize my physical health. I talked a little bit in the 2022 recap about how my physical health goal is really more focused on just that, prioritizing my physical health and making sure that it is an important piece of my daily routines, as opposed to focusing on the number on the scale and losing weight, and that it is not as much of a priority for me right now, but that I don't want to lose the things that I currently do. And I almost use a different word here, like continue, or like something to acknowledge that I'm not necessarily trying to change anything here. I'm not necessarily trying to do more or different things than what I do now in terms of like movement and water and sleep and meal planning. I'm trying to just do all the same things, but I want to make sure that it doesn't fall to the wayside as we are packing and moving, which I know it will in some areas, right? Like the second that the movers take my Peloton, then if I want to move, I need to do something else with my body. Or waiting for the Peloton to show up in Chicago, and like finding new gyms in Chicago, finding dance classes in Chicago, like things like that. I want to make sure that just because we're moving, that I'm not letting all of those good, healthy habits that I created the last 3 years basically go away. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with this goal. Is it's not going to be a lot of new stuff. It's going to be mostly stuff I've already established and created that I'm just continuing in 2023. And then the last goal for my personal goals for 2023 is to focus on our finances. This is stemming from the fact that I totally let this slide a lot in 2022. I got very lazy about tracking. Obviously, like, we are fine and financially, but I was very much like, this is close enough or that's close enough. And it was like things would happen and I would get really behind on tracking. Like first it was the wedding, and then it was our trip to Ireland, and then it was our honeymoon, and there were things that I like would happen and I would be like, I'm just gonna like refresh. I use YNAB, you need a budget for tracking, and I just like kept refreshing it. I don't want to do that this year. I want to get really serious about tracking. And this is also kind of one of those like vague goals, but there are some more concrete things behind it that some of them I will share and some of them I won't share. I mean, we have a savings goal that we've created for the new year, but it's like, again, I'm not going to share the number, but I might share some of the actions that I'm taking towards this goal as we go throughout the year. So that is going to be it for my 2023 goals. Oh, wait. All right. The last thing I want to talk about here is my word of the year. And it's that I don't have one yet. Maybe I have not decided. So normally, at least for the years that I've chosen a word of the year, which I think this would be my 5th year. Is that right? Like 2019, 20, 21, 22. Yeah. So for 4 years, I've had a word of the year. And every year, it's sort of just come to me. It either really kind of encompasses all of my goals or encompassed like one really like specific thing for that year. And it really, I didn't have to think very hard. Like I came up with a bunch of ideas. I looked at synonyms and definitions and I was like, this is right. That didn't happen. I came up with a lot of ideas, and I'll share with you some of the ones I was thinking. I was thinking foundation or foundational, establish or established, like grounded. What was the other word? Now I forget what it is. They're all on my computer with all their definitions and all their synonyms, but none of it felt right. And I just don't want to force it. It's something that I do like. I like having a word of the year. I think it's really great. And if something comes to me between now and the end of the year, or even in the first month of the year, I'll pick it and I'll have a word of the year and I'll share that with you somewhere. But as of right now, I don't have one. So if you have any recommendations of words that fit into that zone, you can kind of get the vibe, right? From my yearly goals is really building kind of a foundation. I mean, I don't hate foundation. I don't know, it just doesn't, there's something about it that doesn't feel right. We'll see. I feel like I've looked up every synonym that's possible related to that realm of words, but maybe one of you very strong wordsmithing type brains, because that is not my brain, right? I'm a very math logical brain. Words are not usually my strong suit. If you come up with a suggestion, maybe I will find an answer. And I'm not also pressuring myself to find it right this second, because I'm not making a physical vision board, which we will talk about in my Q1 goals video a little bit more, and I'll share with you kind of what I'm doing instead. So if you like this video, or if you're excited for that Q1 goals video, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for watching. We actually got married. Oh my God, my foot is asleep. All right, and then my last and first, what?